In this video we're going to look at how layers work in Photoshop. It's quite fundamental. As a bonus we'll learn the super quick auto fixing photo features in Photoshop. Okay, they're called auto tone, contrast and color, and what it'll do is it'll help us really just understand layers properly. Okay, you can see my layers over here and you can see my super awesome adjustments. Alright, let's go and do that now in Photoshop. Okay, first thing to do is open the file we're going to be working with. We can do that under File and go to Open. What you're looking for is the exercise files you've downloaded, okay, and then find a folder called O1 Layers. Open that up, and inside of there should be one called layers.jpg. Click on that, and then click Open. Alright, so remember this video is going to do a couple of things. It's going to show us how to use layers, which is quite fundamental to Photoshop, but it's also going to introduce one of the kind of most easy photo adjustments you can do in Photoshop. It's using the automatic features. So we're going to learn both of those. So first thing we need to do is we need to make sure we can see our layers panel. If you can't see it, go to Window and make sure there's a little tick next to layers even. I can't see it, there it is. Okay, and make sure he's open. You'll see background. What I'd like to do is instead of just like changing this version here, I'd like to create a duplicate of that layer so that I can make an adjustment and then kind of see the difference between the original and the updated version. And that's a really common thing to do in Photoshop. To do that, you right click the word where it says background and say duplicate layer. Okay, now this window appears and what we'll do is we'll give this a name. Okay, we're going to call this auto tone. Let's click OK. Now what's happened here, can you see down here on my layers panel, nothing really visually has changed on our screen, but you can see down here I have two layers, one called background and one called auto tone. They're both looking the same. What I want to do is do this automatic adjustment, and you can kind of tell which one you've got selected. It kind of goes a lighter grey. So have that selected and go up to image. We're going to use auto tone. Cool, huh? Okay, so it's one of the really quick, easy things you can do. Open up an image, and if like our original there, if the lights and the shadows and the midtones aren't all quite nice, okay, this automatic feature will go and adjust them. Okay, so that's auto tone. So what we really came here though is to learn about layers. And you can see at the top here, it's a little hard because it's kind of small, but you can see auto tone, you can kind of see the icon or the thumbnail here has changed to this newer version, but you can also see the background has that faded out version. And what we can do, imagine when you're looking at layers, you see the top one first. You imagine you're a bird flying above and you see this one first and it's blocking out the guy underneath. To turn this top one off and make it invisible, to see the background, see there's this little eye icon here, just click on him. Okay, and now that one's completely, can't be seen, completely transparent, and you can see the background underneath. It's just a good way to turn this eye on and off to see whether you've made a good adjustment or a bad adjustment. Okay, you can go back to the original. You haven't wrecked the original either. You can always go back to it if you like. Next thing I want to do is let's turn off the eyeball on auto tone. Let's click the background layer so it goes this lighter grey, and let's duplicate it again. So right click, go to duplicate layer, and let's call this one auto contrast. So we looked at automatic tones. Okay, that's one of the automatic features, and we're going to go through the other two that are quite useful. Okay, real quick and easy as well. So we've got this kind of faded out version. Let's go to image. You can see we've done tone. Let's do auto contrast. Now this effect is definitely better than the original, but probably wasn't as good as auto tone. You can see over here on my layers panel, I've got auto contrast. Let's turn the eyeball off on it so we can compare it with the original. You can kind of see this layer stack here. This one's invisible, so I can't see it. I can turn auto contrast off to see the background. Okay, but if I turn auto tone back on, I'm like, yeah, for me personally, it's hard to see, I guess, when you're watching these videos because color depends on your screen, but you probably notice auto tone's a nicer one. Let's look at the last option and compare which automatic feature we like, all the while getting used to layers. So I'm going to turn the top eyeballs off and have the background selected, right click it, duplicate layer. This one is called auto color. Auto color. Okay, let's click OK. Go up to image, let's go to auto color, and pretty good. Looks pretty close to auto tone. So if I turn auto tone on and off, depending on what resolution you're watching this video in, you might not see very much of a difference. Okay, there's a little slight difference. It's just kind of maybe tonal range. One's a bit more. Auto tones have got a warmer feel to it, and auto color has just a tiny green tinge to it. So a couple of things we've learned is let's kind of finish off layers, and then we'll talk about these adjustments and where they're good for. So in terms of the layers, what I'd like you to do is practice turning on, let's say I wanted to just see auto contrast. Okay, so I turn this top one off. Let's say, one of the things I guess I like to ask my classes when they're live is like, hey guys, I'm turning auto color on and off. Why is nothing changing? Okay, and everybody goes, yeah, we know, Dan. And eventually somebody says, it's because this one's on top. Okay, and we're just getting used to this. We're getting started. So, okay, if you can play around with all of these guys underneath, and nothing's going to happen because this guy's on top, and he's blocking the view of the other things. Now, two other things before we move on from layers is that you can change the order of them. So let's say that you want auto color at the top. What you can do is grab auto color by clicking, holding, and dragging the text here. Drag. See, it turns into like a little fist, like he's grabbing it, and then you'll see a little blue line up here. There it is. So that'll drag it just above contrast. If I keep going, another little blue line up here. If you go crazy, it gets lost. So you just got to kind of drag and just keep an eye out for those blue lines. So at the top there means auto color's on top. Let's say I want auto tone on top. Let's say auto contrast on top. You get in the swing of it. You can drag it down, you can drag it up, just looking for those blue lines. So the last thing I'd like to mention about layers before we move on is background. Background's special. So when you open up a JPEG or a PNG, okay, often it's called background, and one of the big things is that it's locked. The trouble with that is like, it won't do it, okay? Okay, it doesn't like it. So what we need to do is we need to give it a name. That's the best way to kind of play around with the lock here, okay, or remove the lock. You can double click the word background, okay, and up here, you can give it a name. I'm just going to call mine original. The cool thing about that is that the lock has been removed. I've never in my life gone, man, I wish that lock was on there. It's always just a pain. So if you're finding like it's a bit weird, it is a bit weird. I don't know, it's just one of the Photoshop things. Okay, so I've called it original. Now I can move to the top, do what I like with it. We bring it up here because it's going to come more and more important as we go through the course. There's something which you just can't do the background because it's locked. You could lock it again by clicking this lock icon. We never want to. But yeah, that is it for layers. Now what I will do is turn off the original, is these three here. I don't want you to leave this class thinking, auto tone's always better. Okay, it's not always. This is kind of doing, later on in the course you'll look at levels. This is what this is trying to do. Auto color is dealing with the hue and saturation. They're just doing it automatically. And the thing is if this was a different image, you might find, because in this case auto contrast didn't do a great job, right? You might find that it's actually absolutely perfect for the job that you were doing. So I find the auto features is really good when I don't want to do amazing photo retouching. I just want it to be better. Let's say I'm uploading photos to my Facebook or business web gallery, and I just want them to be better. Okay, so I'm going to open up Photoshop, smash away at auto tone because I figured out that was the best one for my kind of photo shoot, and then just keep doing it and saving them so I don't have to go through and do any kind of hardcore adjustments that we're going to do a bit later. Okay, so just quick and easy, but don't think auto tone is better than auto contrast. It really depends on your images. Alright, last thing we'll do is we're going to save this file. Okay, so we're going to go to File and hit Save. And something strange is going to happen. It's not going to save it. It was called layers.jpg, you can see in the top left here. But because we've added layers, this is a specific Photoshop feature. Okay, JPEGs can't have layers. So it needs to be saved in a different format. And Photoshop's clever and says you need to be PSD. Now if you're on a Mac like me, yours might look like this. That's fine. But see this little icon here? It's just better if it's opened up. Okay, and make mine a little bit smaller as well. If you're on a PC, it's already open. Okay, so on a Mac, just click that to open it up. You don't need to change anything. We're going to call ours layers.psd, and all it means is it's going to be very similar to the last one, except it's got this little bit in here. The file size is going to be a bit bigger, but it's great because it's got all this layers that we can go and turn on and off later on. So let's save it as layers.psd and click save. Now this pops up. We might as well cover this here. Maximize compatibility. This is always on. You never want. It just means that this is likely to open in older versions of format. So, older versions of Photoshop. So if you're sending this to somebody who has CS6 or CS5, it's more than likely going to open. The file size gets a tiny bit bigger, but it's not worth turning that off to save the file size because, yeah, it just means somebody might not be able to open it up. You can click Don't Show Again. I can't because I am a trainer and I need to show this to everybody that's new. It's a pain in the bum. Okay, but let's just click OK and ignore that. I'm not going to mention it again for the course. course. Alright, let's go to File, Close, and move on to our next video.